Hello and welcome everybody. Lovely seeing you here for our 50th holding space for self and others. It's really great to have your company, whether you're joining us live or watching the recording at a later time. My name's Jackie Short. I'm the Director of Sydney Centre for Creative Change, and I'm really excited to be hosting this training for you today and introducing our special guest in just a moment. Before we get underway, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I come to you from today, the Eora people of the Gadigal Nation, and I'd like to pay respects to Indigenous elders, past, present and emerging, right around this great, wonderful land that we live, breathe, work and play on. So today, for our 50th of these webinars that we've been hosting since the beginning of the pandemic, I'm really excited to welcome a special guest who's going to be presenting today on a topic that's going to be close to all of our hearts if it isn't already, addressing ableism in counselling. How language can make all the difference. And Karin Holmes is going to be our guest presenter today, and she's very excited to be with you and to share some of her personal and professional knowledge about this field. I'm going to be sharing some slides with you as we go forward this morning, but just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up if you're new to this program that we run, to let you know, as I mentioned before, that it will be being recorded and the edited version of this will be available on our website in the coming weeks. If you would like to get a PD certificate for your participation today, there's two things that you need to do. Stay with us till the very end in 75 minutes. I'm going to, in chat, be putting a link to a quiz, and that quiz will enable you to answer 5 very simple true-false questions about the content today. And on successful completion of that quiz, you'll get a web address immediately in a link afterwards that enables you to cut and paste that into your browser and make your own PD certificate for today. So you should be able to get that within 5 minutes, and you can email that to yourself. So all you need to do is download that link. And if that all sounds really confusing, don't worry, it'll all be on our website in a couple of weeks. After today, I'm going to send you an email with some follow-up information. And as soon as the edited version of this is available, I'll send you another email that will detail again how to access the quiz and get the PD certificate if that's important today. We try and make these webinars as interactive as possible, and to that end, Karin's going to be asking some reflection questions throughout this time today. There'll be an opportunity for a Q&A at the end, and most importantly, there'll be a chance to connect with others in a breakout room for about 5 or 10 minutes at the end to reflect on what you've got out of this and, critically, what impact it's going to have on your counselling practice. So I really look forward to facilitating all of this for you today. So without further ado, I'd like to just share my screen and do some introductions about what we're going to be doing today. So this presentation on ableism, I think, is really important for all of us. I think there's so many assumptions we can make about working in this counselling space with others. And this presentation today is going to ask us to be really reflective about a number of things, including the language that we use to really best engage and work supportively with others. I'd like to introduce Karin to you. She is a registered counsellor and writer who has been working in grief and trauma counselling. She's also an MS and inclusion advocate. Karin has been working as a counsellor for 8 years and has volunteered in the pregnancy and baby loss community during that time as well. She's passionate about helping clients become comfortable with their stories and letting go of shame to allow healing in a way that suits them. As part of her own healing, Karin wrote the book, How to Survive a Miscarriage, a guide for women, their partners, friends and families after losing her very first pregnancy in 2011. After being diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 2018, Karin has combined her love for language and helping others with her advocacy work for inclusion and disability justice. And I'm so pleased and proud to share this space with you today, Karin, and I'd like to introduce you now. Welcome.
Thank you, Jackie, and thank you so much for having me here in your beautiful space. And I'm so excited to have this opportunity to talk about something very close to my heart, both personally and professionally. Before I start, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I'm on, which is the Ngunnawal Nation, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. My presentation to you all today is sort of in 3 parts. I would like to sort of start by addressing the concept of ableism as a whole, and then dive in and focus on the language, especially inclusive language. What is that? How can we use it? And where are the trip-ups? Where are the challenges, especially if you are someone who's a non-disabled? And then the 3rd part sort of is the conclusion. We bring it all together, and so I also have some tips and tricks for you to hopefully take with you, but also to reflect on in the breakout groups. And any questions, like Jackie said, hopefully we'll have some time for that as well. Right, so when I looked into ableism and definitions, and you might already have done that work as well. It comes with lots of fancy words, but in short, I found a very quick one that said essentially it's being discriminated against as a disabled person because society perceives the typical abilities of non-disabled people as superior. And I want to work from that point because it is such an entrenched belief and narrative, and it will pop up as I go through my presentation. So we have a definition, so that's one thing, which is great. But how does it work in our life, and how does it work in a professional setting as a counsellor in your practice or day-to-day work in general? I would just like to sort of break this one up into 3 different challenges. They come at least in 3s. And then sort of digging into the language a bit. So the challenges when it comes to ableism in the mental health space is profit before inclusion, education gaps, and then the language. So let me dig into profit before inclusion. What does that mean? And how is that a challenge? I feel, both from a personal perspective, especially, that everybody, or most people, are all for it. We're all for inclusion. We all want to have this great world where everybody is treated the same and everybody has equal opportunity. You know, all this sort of fuzzy, warm stuff. In the world that we live in, which is driven by capitalism, inclusion is often the thing that falls off the wagon first. We all might want to work or even support someone who has a disability, but it might just not be feasible because it costs more money than something else. So that's why in especially the mental health space, there are certain steps that are being taken to either include disabled clients or disabled counsellors, but it doesn't go far enough. And what I would like to sort of use here as an example is when you get to that really exciting point, maybe where you sort of go, I'm going to go off by myself and I'm just going to start my own practice. I'm going to need my own rooms. I'm going to need my own setup. In all of those thoughts or all of these processes, and maybe especially to those who already have done this exciting step and are in private practice maybe, where was the thought for you to go, is this space accessible? And what does accessible space actually mean? Because when you spend time on these thoughts quickly, you will go to the point of money. Maybe you have steps or stairs that lead up to your room or your practice as a whole. No problem, right? It might be, and often is. But because the world operates on marginalized people not really being seen, the thought process stops there. It's like, I'm not going to install a ramp. I'm not going to install a handrail. No one's going to need that. No one who's disabled will come and see me. If those thoughts actually happen at all. And that is a very, very good example of how insidious actually ableism is. We count so little that we are not even part of the thought process. And it's not because people are bad or mean to hurt us. It's just such a culturally entrenched way of thinking that we fall off the table before the table is even finished being set up. And then even if that thought happens, it's like, hang on, my space is great, but not everybody can come and see me because there's 30 stairs up to my room. It still will be, oh, well, someone else can work with them. So while I'm not saying, oh, let's tear down all your buildings and rebuild, it's just such an important thing to understand that we get excluded before anything major even happens. And money is driving that. Because when you're at that exciting point of, oh my God, this is my place, you want to get it going and you want to make money. Fair enough. But we don't necessarily have that ability or awareness rather to sort of go, okay, but can I make this an accessible space? And that leads into the second challenge of the education gaps. We count, again, so little that educating others about what the needs of disabled people are, people just don't know. Like, what is needed? An inclusive, accessible space isn't just one thing. It is a lot of things. And that is a huge potential to make a really big difference, but it's also overwhelming for the single practitioner or even for a group of counsellors. Like, what does that mean? Because someone who comes as a client who has a physical disability needs a differently accessible space than someone who lives with autism and has sensory challenges. But again, it just might not even come across as something that needs to be addressed when getting ready or even changing your space. And the third one is when we then sort of dig into the actual interaction when someone has made it and has come to see you, the language. Are we and how can we actually help someone who lives with a disability rather than stopping or hindering their healing? And that is the main point of my presentation. Obviously, I love talking about building codes and all other fun stuff, but this is not the time. So let's dig into language. And this part, I will talk about inclusive language and what that means, what it looks like, and also how can you catch yourself out, what to be aware of, and how to practice. Because it is, in many ways, an unlearning and a practicing of something that is maybe known, but it's not something that comes naturally or you even feel comfortable with just yet. So if I may, inclusive language, you may have heard of it already in other areas of counselling as well. This is not just for disabled people. When it comes to inclusive language for your clients with a disability, we talk about terminology a lot. Sorry, terminology that does not alienate. Okay, alienating someone is closely connected to discriminating, but it is a little bit different. So inclusive language looks, in this case, looks at how people want to be addressed and how they set the tone of how they talk or don't talk about the disability they have and the challenges that come with it. So we talk about in the disability space of either a person first approach or how do you say person first? And, oh yeah, sorry. So it's either person first or a sort of identity first language, and I'll break that down. Generally though, whatever the language that the individual chooses is the one that deserves to be respected. So a person first language is So if I may use myself as a example, it's like, hey, I'm Karin and I have MS. Okay, or I live with MS. Somebody else might say, hey, my name is Sarah and I am autistic. So that then sort of means that they sort of go, hey, I'm the person first. I am name. And disability/challenges that come with it are second. In other settings, in other situations, it may come first. It says, I am autistic, I am physically disabled. And it may sort of sound, well, that's essentially the same, right? It is very similar, but it comes from either is it identity driven or person driven. And sometimes it could be they're really close together. It really depends on the circumstance, especially if we bring it down to your setting where someone, imagine, is a new client and you need to get to know them. Disclosing a chronic illness or an invisible disability may be on the top of their list. So it comes out as sort of like, this is part of my identity. Or maybe because of what they've been through with other practitioners, maybe they had a bad experience. They are more cautious and they will be more person focused in their language, meaning they will not straight away disclose that there is a physical or mental health challenge present, and that's okay. It is really to listen. I know that sounds simple, but these are like the sort of, it's such fine differences in the language. If someone comes into a room and says, hello, I'm such and such, and I have MS. So for me, as a client of a counsellor, I do work with someone. I personally think every counsellor deserves to have a counsellor. So I didn't disclose that at all. It's sort of oh, someone's not on mute. Right, that can happen. Also, I do apologize. I actually have a child at home with me, so maybe if you hear background noises, it might actually be me, and I do apologize. I'm a sole parent to my children, so I'm juggling the craziness of work and motherhood today. Bear with me. If I come back to the language, so yeah, it's either identity focused or person focused, and it is important to respect that there is a difference, because for able-bodied people, this may not be a differentiation that matters, because you're all the things. And it's layers of identity that generally you're allowed to sort of express when it's needed. While for us, there comes a bigger risk. If I do disclose my health struggles, like, what does that mean? How am I being perceived? So that's why personally, I often choose a person-focused approach, because it feels safer. It feels like I can protect myself with this approach of language. And I cannot stress enough how difficult it can be to incorporate a health challenge into a conversation, let alone a part of what my identity is. And if I may once more use myself as an example, I am, people tell me, still fairly young. I mean, I don't feel it, but apparently I am. I mean, 40s, am I right? So when people see me out and about, or if I'm, at the school for an event, I use walking sticks and those walker thingies, and people just assume that I've hurt myself, that what I have is temporary, and I hide behind that and keep the language focused on my person. I just say, oh yeah, I have spinal cord damage, which is true. It's not wrong. It's just not the whole story. But it keeps, again, I am not disclosing how deep this actually sort of goes within my identity, because I don't know how safe it is. Of course, you can argue, well, this is out in the community and no one shares their deepest, darkest stories with just about anybody. True. And it is different when we go into a counselling room, where we would like to sort of go, yes, this is where I can open up. So when we bring it into a professional setting, how can you encourage that whatever language the person chooses can come forward? So it is, and this is really important, and I need to stress this as well. You are already doing it, okay? Because, you know, when we start a conversation, say, what brought you here today? Or tell me more about blah, blah, blah. Like, we have these open-ended, sort of vague invitations for someone to share. So that's point number one, because it means we don't assume someone comes in with a very specific issue. Well-meaning, though, is not necessarily being supportive. So what do I mean by that? When then someone would say, disclose to you, know, I have, again, I bring it back to myself, I have MS and I find it really hard, which I do, by the way. You know, what can you do to keep me sort of safe in that space and also in the language that I use? It's really that it would be less is more. So don't ever assume, you know, if I say to you, life with MS is hard, then the best thing is like, what does that mean? What does that look like for you? A lot of times people say, oh, that must be very hard. It is very hard. No joke. Or it is too much. Yes, it is. But it's just that there is the challenge of connecting to your client without necessarily then sort of going, oh, yeah, no, totally know what you're talking about. This level of connection isn't helping. Because it also then, when we come back to language, I don't feel the safety in that. The honesty of, like, I don't know what that's like, is what I'm after, because I'm the expert in it. And I want to tell you about it, about how hard it is, without having to sort of feel like I need to constantly tell you like how great my life is, though. So the safety in language comes really down to listening for the counsellor. Like, what are the words? Do I use a lot of negative language? And I'll come back to that in a moment. Do I try and tell you something that I think you want to hear? You know, how shame-driven is my language? I'll come back to that as well. So it's either then, again, remembering that moment, is it a person first, or is it an identity first language? And go from there. You know, what has been chosen first? And then explore that as well. Like, why is that? Because this is sort of what I call know thy client, because that language is also heavily influenced by internalized ableism. Okay, so this is sort of like my next big talking point, that you have your own internalized ableism and I have mine too. The cultural narrative around disability is so entrenched, and it has been being driven so hard, especially by politics in recent years, that we, even if we don't like it, this is the stories that we refer to when we hear disability. So this entrenched narrative of disabled people being less than, of being a burden, of being, you know, those that apparently all the able-bodied people need to make room for, you know, because we have the audacity to ask for a place at the table. So it's really a narrative that is condescending, that is hurtful, and that, of course, is plain wrong. But it comes back to challenge you in those situations and in those also interactions where someone comes and is like, I have this disability and I struggle with it. Because your first instinct might be, okay, let's fix it. but what is there to fix? Okay, well, technically a lot, but it isn't necessarily in the one-to-one interaction. The fixing needs to happen on a huge, bigger scale that no one of us can sort by themselves. That would be a collective action, which is a story for another day. So, but this support, because when we look in the counselling space, it is sort of like, okay, I'm here to support people. But in the back of your mind, it might still be, I want people to be better. I want them to live their best lives. I want them to just, leave this session to something to, take away from. And I love that. Solution-driven approaches to life are great. I feel, though, the challenge when it comes to internalized ableism is really twofold. One, again, is the language that we'll come back to. But the first is also that the assumptions and even, the whole perception of your profession as a whole is that you want to help people. That's my choice. I want to help people, very simply put. But what does that mean? In many, many instances, with people that have a disability, a chronic illness, that maybe even recover from a chronic illness or a devastating illness such as cancer, to widen the perspective here a little bit, is what is needed is to hold space for them, to be seen, to be heard. The hardest thing I often come across in a professional setting is that I either get treated as if I'm healthy, which I would love to be, but I'm not, or the fact that the professionals try to connect with me so that I have an autoimmune disorder. So MS, in case you don't know, is classified as an autoimmune disorder, which then is obviously a chronic illness or disability. Yeah, it makes it hard. Because if I just sort of say I have, or I live with MS and I'm trying to work as a counsellor, and then someone goes, well, I have these flare-ups and then I break out in rashes, just as an example, and they're chronic. It's like, okay, and the focus is away from me. I have not been seen or heard. Or then the other extreme is that apparently I'm just a constant source of inspiration, which is also not helpful, because I always call it sort of it's a quick way out. It's sort of saying, you're so inspirational, you're so strong, okay, bye, because that means, am I already implying you don't need help because you're very inspirational and you're very strong, so I'm going to go over here and stay in my own little privilege bubble. It is not wrong to say or think that someone is inspirational or strong, but it isn't what is needed. And that comes to clients as well. I think it's important to obviously highlight their strength and really remind them that they are present, but it is not an excuse to stop the work there. Like, what else do they need? And that is where it may become uncomfortable for you, because it will challenge your privilege and your assumptions. And I will address that very shortly too. But before I do, I want to finish up with that second point when it comes to internalize that, especially that is driven now by the community and maybe sort of brought to you as the able-bodied counsellor, the person that we seek help from. It's very fear-based, very, very fear-based, which is very, very exhausting. So for me, with MS, especially on Instagram, with all the fancy hashtags, a lot of people refer to them as warriors, like, this illness will not defeat me, or I'm a warrior and I will fight back. And I'm over here, it's like, oh my God, this is so exhausting. Because I tried it as well. It's like, okay, I'm going to fight this. right? Because that is what the community does. We must not give up, and you have to fight. And the doctors and nurses, who are all often able-bodied themselves, it sort of, you know, even enforce that language. Like, you're a warrior now, like, you got this. And I understand that this comes from a good place, right? But it also comes, though, from a place of uncomfortableness. It's like, I don't know how to help you. So why don't you become a warrior, and then I'm over here minding my own business. It goes deeper than that as well. So like I said, I try to sort of go, I am a warrior, but I have to tell you all, I cannot fight my own body. It already does that. I cannot win this war if we go with that fear-based language, generally because life is finite. So I'm not going to win eventually. But overall, though, it is such a devastating and literally, like, it's just choking the life out of me that I'm only a warrior now that must push back. It does not allow for a healing approach that is holistic, that allows me to fall apart, that allows me in a counselling setting to sort of go to my counsellor or any counsellor, like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore, and just be seen and held in that space, because the warrior language dictates that I must always keep fighting. And so if you have someone that comes to you and uses that kind of language, be curious and explore it a bit with them. It's like, hang on, I've sort of heard you say you're a warrior, or although that one is very common, or you sort of go like, this won't defeat me, and I'm not going to be defeated, and I'm going to fight back. Like, any of these, like, explore that. Like, where is it coming from that they use this language? Does it actually make sense using this language? Or is it just actually, oh, hang on, internalized ableism, I'm taking on what the person tells me, or these around me? Because when we sort of look at medicine, Western medicine anyway, as a whole, it comes from a place of lack, right? You come in and something's wrong with you. And of course, when you have a broken bone in your body, it's very important for doctors to sort of go, well, that's not good, let's fix that. It's brilliant Western medicine for that. But when you have someone with a chronic illness that is so much more complex, constantly being told what is wrong with you and what a burden you are, I can't help but then incorporate that fake identity into mine and have it slip through with language. So there is really a huge opportunity for a counsellor to sort of go, stop. I mean, not stop, like, hey, can we explore that? Where is this coming from? And work and sit with that fear. Because at the very bottom of any warrior, dare I say, is the fear that I can't do this, that I'm going to lose. For those who struggle with death, that I'm going to die. So I can't ever admit that I'm shit scared of the future. I'd rather fight. So it will then open up, obviously, a conversation and a healing process that is a lot more complex than sort of going, yeah, you're a fighter, you're a warrior, and move on with that. Because maybe, just maybe, and I don't know that for sure myself yet, because I'm on that journey myself, surrendering to what is and seeing myself as someone, and anyone with a disability, as someone who's still learning, who's still healing, who still is evolving, and to sort of go, okay, how can I shape that? How can a counsellor support me in that? And then you're going to push back against ableism. You're going to push back against the whole system that wants to tell us that we are less than and keep us in that sort of marginalized space. And there is this huge, huge potential when it just, dare I say, comes to language. Like, we're not asking, maybe not right now, to be honest, but maybe later we'll ask for anarchy. But right now, you know, there is that power of the language that you can change at such a deep and profound level. It's like, hang on, why is it so fear-based, your language? what does that even mean for your worldview? Is it fear-based or is it love-based? And really sort of, make that change there with language. It is so powerful. It is so, so powerful that, yes, we can be warriors, but maybe without the aggression, as a thought. Now, also when it comes to that language, and I just addressed it a little bit, is redirecting that narrative. That's what you do when we sort of go, okay, where is that fear-based language come from? How is it connected to the internalized ableism? Because what often comes into play a lot of the time is with internalized ableism of disabled people, that we are really scared to ask for more. And sort of say what I receive isn't actually good enough. Because the narrative is like, you're disabled, you get the disability pension and NDIS, like, come on, like, what else do you want? I'm like, so much more, so much more. And we must ask for more, but it's hard because no one wants us to do that. So when you then sort of redirect that narrative and encourage some to sort of go, what is it? Like, let's dream big, let's, start the revolution in this counselling space. That is healing beyond measure almost. And it is as simple and as complicated as redirecting that narrative. And when it comes, how can you then ensure that the session, or sessions rather, become this really great success, is that you acknowledge your privilege. But at the end of the day, your perception, what are they? Is it judgy? Because you sort of think, oh, disabled person again. It's like, oh no, it's hard, but is there an opportunity to be more open? It's like, why does the same thing come up? Why? Is it because the person is in victim mode? Or is it that the barriers that we as a society have put in place are just so big, so hard to overcome, that this sense of overwhelm just can't go anywhere? What is it? It is sort of it requires you to, once you acknowledge your privilege, and by the way, even though I am disabled, I still have a lot of privilege myself, simply because of the color of my skin and where I live, which is important for myself to remind myself as well. But yeah, it's that privilege as well of being healthy, of having maybe not closely or deeply really considered what life with a disability means, that we assume we know, but do we really? And it's just that you, and I would like to invite you to become more comfortable with the fact that you don't know what it's like. And don't look at this as something that's like, oh my God, that goes against me. No, it is actually a huge opportunity for growth and change. I don't know what this is like, so I am going to listen. And just a word of caution here before I bring it all together for the conclusion, which is also very important, is learning from others, from people with disability. That is where your internalized ableism most likely will kick in the most, because it's quite easy to then go to a disabled person and say, you teach me, you tell me, can you give me a list of disability advocates to follow? Do you come and speak at my event for free, of course, because why would I pay for a disabled person to speak? And so this is especially something, if I may mention Carly Findlay, who's is in Victoria, Melbourne, who's a disability advocate. She lives with ichthyosis, which is a skin condition, and she often gets asked, oh, Carly, can you tell me or put together a list of good organizations or to support? It's like, no. You have able-bodied fingers and you have access to the internet. You do it. So I am not saying do all the work yourself, but be aware that there needs to be a balance. Certain things you can learn by yourself. And your internalized ableism might sort of go, well, I mean, let's be honest, what do disabled people do all day? They have so much time on their hands. They can do that list for me. Which is more systemic in organizations, that disability advocates for speaker roles are often expected to do that for free, because we're just less than, we don't deserve the same. And also we might be annoying because we have accessibility needs to cater for. But that's, again, maybe when the revolution comes, we'll address that. But for now, for your everyday life, is that there is privilege to be acknowledged, and internalized ableism that will clash and either enhances it or will help you break it down. And if I now sort of come to the conclusion of my talk to you, like, what can you do? Like, what is the takeaway? Daily steps that hopefully you can incorporate and make sense to you. That's the most important thing. So the first thing is stop assuming. And the second is stop assuming. It sounds so simple, but it's done so quickly. You know, that instead of assuming, be curious. You may even already be someone who works maybe with people with disability, but if you met someone like me who has MS, doesn't mean you know everybody who has MS. If you work with someone who is on the autism spectrum, doesn't mean you know them all, because we are all the same but different. So instead of assuming, be curious. And it's like, look, and that's the fine balance to strike, right? Like, if you now have listened to me and this is someone with MS, and then maybe you meet someone again who has the same, it's like, oh, it's like the lady that I talked to. No, don't assume we're the same, because we're not. And of course, I fully appreciate that we go against biology a little bit when we sort of go, because we're all the same, right? As a collective, we're all the same. But just to sort of go, even if you go into any session, to sort of go, okay, stop assuming, be curious. And that leads to the second one, you know, does it make you uncomfortable to be curious? Where is the discomfort sitting? You know, are you worried that you might say the wrong thing? Are you worried you might upset your client by admitting that you, to some degree, don't know? So that's then really the third step, which will ultimately lead to you unlearning internalized ableism, is that you ask and talk less. So, and by asking, utilize the person-focused, identity-focused language as well. What is it like for you to live with XYZ? What are your challenges? You mentioned these and these challenges before. What is it that you want to talk about today? That it's really also that, and also when they come in and, you know, it's all just too much, that you hold space, and that's all that's needed. I see you, I hear you, this is hard. And refrain from the warrior language. Then it's just like, let's then be fragile and overwhelmed together. Because that seems so simple, but it's when, if I bring it back to me personally, is what I crave and need the most. That someone says to me, okay, this fucking sucks. Let's just sit there and we'll change the world again tomorrow. So to sort of summarize for the conclusion and the tips, that, yeah, stop assuming, be curious, and to have that language that really is around the person as a whole. And with those words, I have come to the end of my presentation. I think I will have, I'm going to give over to Jackie soon again to create the breakout rooms. Thank you so much for listening and having me here. And on back to Jackie.
Thanks, Karin, for such an insightful and a personally infused presentation to us about the importance of access inclusivity, not assuming, listening well, and being vulnerable in our own curiosity. So thank you so much for that. I know there'll be some keen questions from a number of people here, and there's some options with questions when we come back from the breakout rooms. You can physically put your hand up and we'll invite you to unmute and share, or you might want to write them in the chat and we can read them. Either you can read them, Karin, or can read them out, whatever you prefer. But we are going to move into breakout rooms now, and Ellie's going to set those rooms up for us. So we're going to have 3 or 4 people in a breakout room for 10 minutes. If you can have your cameras on for this, obviously much nicer to be able to see people in those breakout rooms. If you're not able to, that's okay. What I'd invite you to do is to reflect on what you've just heard, what you've just felt, and what you think this might mean for you personally and professionally in terms of how you engage with those in your worlds, again, personally and professionally, who might be experiencing some significant difference from you or some difference in ableism from you. So I'd really love you to share that with others. And when you come back from those breakout rooms, I'll invite a few people to share their reflections about what they spoke about if you'd like to, and then we'll have some time for questions. Before we wind up today, I'm also going to give you an opportunity to win one of our paid webinars. So you win a $60 webinar, somebody today, and we'll be doing that at the very end. So hang in there with us if you'd like to have an opportunity to win a webinar, and obviously get that link today for your PD certificate if that's important for you.
Could I utilize this time to talk to Karin, if it's okay?
I'll just check. Karin, are you open to taking some taking question now? Yeah.
Yes, there's some great questions. Is it Etka? Do I say that right?
Ekta, yes, that's right.
Ekta, sorry. Yeah, okay. So first question, how do you deal with a person where you feel his strengths are shadowed by the biases and he's drifting to a negative space? Okay, so, oh gosh, I can relate to that so much. So really, it's a fine line between acknowledging for anyone in a marginalized group that a lot is against us, but not make that our identity. You know, I sort of called it victim mode, which may have been a bit harsh, but it can become an identity of, well, the world's against me and what's the point? And this is who I am now. And I think and I mean, I'm in that space regularly, or more often than I would like to admit. So really to pull out someone from that is to really, really bring it back to the person, because that assumption of the world is against me, of no one's going to help me, or everything is bad, is an internalized belief. And to sort of go, this is the outside world, but if you're honest, what does your inside world say? What is that voice saying? Can we explore that and really support that, you know? Because a lot of people will still say, well, I am pretty useless. Like, I can't use my legs, and I can't do this, I can't work, and you know, I don't have any money. Like, you know, the list goes on of this negativity. It's like, okay, but in an ideal world, what would your narrative look like? And that is often where they sort of go, well, actually people would maybe do this, and I would set up a business, or I would do, you know, advocacy work, and I would love blah, blah. So that you really, your job is then to sort of create that environment where we sort of go, we shut out the world outside and we look inside, because that's where the power lies, where the true narrative is. And really gently redirect, because the I can't narrative is something that people settle in quite quickly. And it's also the one that is actively enforced in with the world we live in, right? So the pushing back and the dismantling of that will take time, and probably a lot of gentle redirection from you. But it can be done, and it's very powerful, for sure. Second question, or anything, sorry, does that make sense? Or yeah. Is it a good idea for a person to move away from his family if family is the root cause of the complexes? Trying to be diplomatic here. Look, sometimes yes, it is. Yeah. Because family is a concept that is very romanticized in our culture, in Western culture especially, where, you know, family above everything and blood is thicker than water and all of that. But we then tend to forget that families can also be very toxic.
Welcome back, everybody, after the breakout rooms. Really lovely you had an opportunity to have a chat with a couple of people about your reflections and maybe some of the implications of what you heard Karin just presenting. I'm wondering if there is anybody who'd like to share what they've reflected on or what impact this might have had for their personal or professional experience. If you want to put I'd love to talk or yes in the chat, or give us a wave. And I'm going to invite just a couple of people maybe to give some reflections, or even if you have a question at this point for Karin, feel free to put your hand up as well. Guma, hi, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right.
Yeah,
Would you like to unmute?
Sure. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for picking me first. Look, you know, something opened up when I was in the breakout room with other colleagues. Sorry, please don't mind if I forget name. Francesca, and what's your name? I was with Francesca, and who's the other?
It was
That's
Kathy.
okay. That's okay. Don't worry.
So
Thanks,
Kathy and Francesca. You know, I was like, you know, I was not sure what I really get in, you know, like in this presentation from now, you know, from morning till now. And but all I was thinking about my son, 19 years old, very healthy, you know, no health issue when he was a child. And 5 or 6 months, no, last year when he had COVID vaccine, after 1 month, he had a COVID vaccine complication, spontaneous pneumothorax, and, you know, it was fixed. And after 5-6 months later, he diagnosed with diabetes type 1, autoimmune condition. And you know, I'm myself as a nurse, but you know, when it comes with your own family, just I feel useless. I don't know anything about it, and then I feel so useless and so hopeless that, you know, what a useless mother I am, that, you know, I could not keep my child healthy. I was making myself, you know, wrong, and I was feeling guilty, so much guilt. But you know, when I was talking with Kathy and Francesca, when I was sharing this, and then something opened up that, you know, actually my son he's wonderful, you know, he's not worried the way I am, and he manages one insulin, he managing in when diet, you know, all the things he's putting in the wall, what diet give him, how much calorie, how much protein. He's being like already dietitian, you know, he knows everything about him, and he walk, you know, he's so empowered, you know, and he enjoying his life. I can hear that he's laughing watching the video and things. He love cricket. But you know, actually, you know, when I'm looking deep inside, I was disempowering him myself, you know, like I was making him small. I was thinking him is small while he is already big. And then when Kathy told me that, how about, you know, being in the space of love-based space, what is that? Yeah, love-based and strength-based. If I be in that space, and then being in the curiosity space, like what is possible in the medical science for the diabetes type 1, what treatment are happening, what scientists are working on this, maybe miracle can happen, you know, they might be able to transplant pancreas, and maybe they will be able to replace all those, you know, beta cell. So, you know, really totally shifted my way of thinking. Thank you so much. What a gift this program. Thank you. Really, I got enough thanks.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Grima. And just a lovely reflection on how our own fears can keep people much smaller than what they actually are. So what a beautiful, heartfelt response. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Lisa, I know you had your hand up, and then we'll go to Emma.
Hi. That was a beautiful reflection. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I just really, yeah, that was terrific to hear from a mother. I didn't share this in the breakout room, but I'm hard of hearing, and I just realized after I just heard you speak, Gemma, that my parents used language like, she compensates very well. That was the refrain of my life, how well I compensate. And I think that was also fear-based language, you know, making sure that I felt that I was able to compensate and that I could get through life as a normal person. And, you know, I've only just started learning sign language so that I can communicate with people in my own community. And, you know, just that internalized, I think, ableism. And I think that when you internalize ableism, you also do that to other people, which I have found myself to do. Oh, you know, I have a friend with MS. Oh, you know, she compensates really well. You'd hardly know. Like, really quite enlightening to be here and talk about the sorts of language that we use.
Thank you again for those lovely personal reflections, Lisa. I really appreciate them.
Can I
Karin?
quickly jump in here? Like, thank you to both of you. To also, like, this is perfect. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing. Where, you know, I, as a disabled person, still have a lot of work to do myself. Because, Lisa, thank you for sharing that you're hard of hearing. As you might have seen, the captions weren't on during my presentation. So I actively now just contribute to this space not being as accessible as it could be. So that's really a heartfelt message from me as well. It's not about getting this perfect, but having that awareness of, you know, what can we do better? I just learned now something myself that I will take with me. So thank you, Lisa. And Guma, as a mom of someone who, I have an autistic daughter, I can relate to all these fears so much. And I have kept her small at times as well. And you're not a bad mother. We are all trying the best we can, and you're the best mom to your son.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We just have time very briefly for Emma. I'd love to hear your reflections too, if we could.
Hello. I have more of a question than a reflection, if that's possible.
Sure.
I was really curious about how it was brought up about being a warrior, but without the aggression, like exploring still being the warrior. And I wondered what language might be appropriate, or if there are any examples of that.
Yes, of course. Brilliant question. So to keep it short, two answers is like the world of language is your oyster to some degree, of actually sort of going, well, what works for you as the client? And, you know, because a warrior can be many things, that it's really driven, like, explore that. And for me, it comes back to being enough. And that I define what enough is, and that being enough can change every day. And that incorporates into language as well. I got up today, I got dressed, I'm enough. Tomorrow, I'm holding a webinar, I'm enough. So that's either define what the warrior is, or go into what does being enough and whole and perfectly imperfect mean for them.
Wonderful reflections and great answer to that question, Karin. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Emma, and thank you all. Karin, would you be available maybe with an email address if people had any other questions or opportunities for you, maybe in a paid capacity to speak at their workplaces, or offering some assistance along the way? I'll pass on those details.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank
of
you.
course. Thank you.
That's great. So I've just some final slides to share with you, and the quiz link that we have ready to go. Just wanted to, again, on all our behalves, thank Karin for this very inspiring and practical presentation today. And as I said, after today, you'll get an opportunity to be in further contact should you have any questions or engagements for her. We've got a couple of paid events coming up that you may be interested in, and some free ones I also wanted to let you know about. On the 8th of March, Natalie Craik's presenting on supporting children through family change in that 3-hour training. We also have a symbols and sand tray course that I'll be running 11th to the 13th of March. That's a 3-day, 9-hour event. Engaging Boys and Young Men in Counselling is a very interactive and dynamic presentation on how we can better utilise the needs of young boys and men in ways that are going to engage and work with them in support for supporting them. And we have an online art therapy group, a 5-week group starting in March. We still have a few places left in that one. The alt play therapy training, if you haven't done it and you're working with neurodiversity, really, really encourage you to attend this one. It's very practical and hands-on, particularly if you're working with children and families. Very relevant to what we're talking about today as well. Our March course for the grad cert is full, but we have places now available for July. If you're interested, you can check on the website for that. And our free ones. So just yesterday, I've launched the list for accessing our new free 3-part learning package around creative therapies. And we have these amazing clinicians who are all being interviewed, and they're going to share their insights and some practical tips about working with play therapy, art therapy, and narrative therapy. So if you'd like to get those recordings, you can just click on the link that I'm going to send you and give me your email address, and I'll send you those in about. The next free holding space is coming up in April, and we're going to be talking about the power of volunteering. So do come along to that if you'd like as well. So now we have an opportunity to win a webinar. So somebody can win this $60 webinar, Windows Through Grief. That's a live one that's going to be happening on the 7th of March. So if you're able to attend that one from 2 to 3:30 Sydney time, or you want to gift it to a friend or colleague, you can. And what I'm going to invite somebody to do is to write into the chat now, share, if you're able to share one practical thing that you're going to take away from today. I know a few people have already put some things in, but the first person to write share and is happy to, Dion, you're up. Do you want to unmute and share what you're taking away today to win that webinar?
Hello. Yes, thank you so much for everything today. But the one really great thing that I'll be taking away is the use of language around trying to really hear, really drop in and hear somebody's story, and not jumping in with language and just being in that really open receiving state.
Full takeaway, thanks Dion. And I'm sure there's lots of other things that I can see in the chat there too about the importance of language, listening, understanding, not assuming, challenging that warrior thinking too aggressively, all of those wonderful takeaways. You'll get another opportunity and a link to give us some other feedback that I'm sure Karin would love to read as well. So anything else you'd like to put in the chat now or respond to in the email that you get in a moment, that would be great. And you can do your quiz today that will then enable you to do your PD certificate. If you're not quite sure what that process is, if you go to the website link where you registered for today, you'll get information about how to do the quiz and how to get your PD certificate. But all that will be online in a couple of weeks, and you'll get some emails about that as well. So thank you so much for being here today and participating in this webinar. We're so excited to, I'm so excited to be offering these. And if you know of others who might like to present on a topic that's of relevance to our community, please drop me a line. We've got most of them organised for the year, but a few places left. But I would like to collectively thank Karin for being here and for this very inspiring presentation today. So if you could virtually thank Karin with me, that would be lovely. And we look forward to seeing you all next time. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much, Karin. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.